Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my rant on what I like to call the Disney downfall. And this is my way of discussing and explaining why Disney, this once massive, untouchable empire, is on the verge of crumbling. And I think it's a really interesting topic. I think it's something that's ripe for a video like this. And it's something I've honestly thought about for a while now. And now that numbers are coming in that they've lost billions when it comes to Disney Plus, they're losing billions more when it comes to other parts of the company. I really felt that this was a good time to talk about this. And my focus for this video is going to be offering different reasons for the downfall of Disney or the potential downfall of the company and for its current decline. And a lot of videos I see discussing this topic, they focus a lot on the politics and how Disney is shoving politics down people's throats. They're putting politics first in favor of entertaining audiences. And that is definitely one reason for their current decline, but it's not the only reason. Now, the first reason I want to talk about is oversaturation. And what I mean by that is that Disney, by their own actions, by gobbling up all these other IPs and making their brand bigger than it ever was before, they have oversaturated the market. They've oversaturated the market for the kind of entertainment that they used to be the best in. And it's something that was profitable initially for Disney and made them more money than the company has ever made in its history when it bought Marvel and Lucasfilm and recently purchased 20th Century Fox. But there's a price to be paid when it comes to that kind of approach to a brand or a business. And that price can be steep if the market becomes oversaturated and if those IPs are no longer as popular, because that leads to those IPs no longer being as profitable. And when you have so much more IPs and so much more things attached to your brand, yes, in theory, you have more avenues to make profit, but you also have more avenues to lose profit. And I think that's what Disney is dealing with right now. They're dealing with the consequences of their actions, of building their brand up to the point where it had almost everything under the sun. Marvel, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, 20th Century Fox properties. And now what is happening is because they have oversaturated the market, specifically when it comes to brands that were once really profitable in the past, either for them or for other studios in Star Wars and Marvel, they have made it so those IPs are no longer as profitable because more audiences are getting tired of them. Just look at the current box office totals for Marvel movies or what's going on with Star Wars shows or Marvel shows. And this has really, really hurt the company. And it's something that honestly I called years ago. I mentioned how this was a very risky move to make, and how, yes, it might pay off initially, and you might make so much money that you don't know what to do with it. But after a certain point, the revenue would start to dry up, and you wouldn't really be able to tap that well anymore because it would be dry. And that's what's happening with Marvel. That's why there's only one Marvel movie coming out this year, because audiences are already tapped out when it comes to Marvel films. And it's going to happen to Star Wars if it hasn't happened already. It's going to happen to Indiana. It did happen to Indiana Jones. They did the 5th film and it bombed. It really did terribly financially. It was a net negative for the studio. And this is also a problem in the theme park industry, because Disney decided to expand their theme parks all over the globe during Bob Iger's reign, when they were buying up all these IPs, when they were doing all this other stuff. They spent all this extra money on expansion and building a park in Japan and doing all this other stuff and making a Star Wars park and doing all these other things. Spending all this money to make an immersive Star Wars themed hotel experience, only for that to just be a sunk cost in the end. And when you think that you can just continue to just milk a certain specific IP over and over again, and delude yourself into thinking that that's always going to be there, that it's always going to be something that you can tap into for a consistent revenue stream, you have set yourself up to fail. And what's funny is these other competitors in their own market, Illumination in particular, they have kind of copied a similar sort of thing, but they haven't really necessarily spread themselves too thin yet. So when Illumination made a deal with Nintendo, it wasn't one of those things where, oh, well, they already had a deal with Fox, or they already had a deal with these other companies. That was really their first major brand deal that they made, in terms of making a deal with an already established popular IP. And Illumination was also tapping into a new well, a new avenue for revenue that was fresher. Disney was mining old wells. And after a certain point, when you keep mining old wells, not only do you stop getting gold or stop getting fresh water, you also wind up getting poison water. You get bad water. You get stuff from the well that is not good and is diseased. And that's what's happening. Disney, because they oversaturated the market so quickly, they made it so they didn't necessarily have an ability financially to be able to stay ahead of the curve anymore. So they couldn't go in and make a deal with Nintendo because they had too many IPs already. And it also created a lack of trust when it comes to people who would want to make a deal with Disney, because they felt like, well, how am I going to trust Disney being able to give my IP the respect and the appreciation I feel it deserves if they're also juggling all these other IPs at the same time. And so Illumination came in and they didn't necessarily have that problem, so they were able to get the deal done. And now Illumination is setting themselves up for decades of success financially when it comes to their feature film division, and not only just the Nintendo stuff, but they can also equally as focus on their own properties and their own unique IPs, which have already in some ways eclipsed what Disney has been able to provide at around the same time. Disney oversaturated the market and thought that, oh, if we do that, that there's no way for anyone else to be able to compete. But in the process, it's actually caused a serious problem because it's created a competitor who now is able to insulate themselves from Disney. So now Illumination can thrive while Disney is still cannibalizing itself to death. So yeah, oversaturation is definitely a major reason for Disney's current decline. And this also ties into the streaming market, because when Disney decided to put their um, foot in the door, or throw their magic sorcerer's hat into the ring, so to speak, when it comes to streaming, they were also contributing to further oversaturation of that market. So by doing that, they put themselves in a really bad spot by not realizing and seeing the writing on the wall when it comes to these streaming services and how things are going with these streaming services right now, where the market is becoming equally as oversaturated as family entertainment has become over the years. So Disney just essentially contributed to the oversaturation of both markets that they were trying to be competitive in, let alone make a profit in, which is a really bad position to put yourself in. And I think Disney felt like they could get away with this and still make a significant profit because of another reason for their current decline. And that is just quite simply their stubbornness. Disney was so used to being the king of the mountain when it comes to family entertainment, theme park entertainment, that they started to believe that they were untouchable, that they genuinely were too big to fail. And when that happens, a fall is almost inevitable. And that's what's happening here. They became so stubborn in their belief that, well, they've always been the best. They are the best there was, the best there will be, and there's no one that will come close. That they started to rest on their laurels. They started to think that, oh, well, our brand has been around, it has been profitable, and has been recognizable for 100 years. It'll be the same for 100 more years. We don't have to do that much. We just have to keep, purchasing some IPs here and there, to keep injecting money into our coffers. And, you know, we can lean on our popular IPs. We can release these live action remakes of our Disney Renaissance animated classics. We can really lean on our theme parks, and we can do all of this. And this is all stuff that Disney was able to get away with for many, 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 many years and decades, until the market itself started to shift dramatically. And when that happened, Disney had no plan B. They had no other option that they could think of to really stay ahead of the pack anymore, because they'd become so complacent, because become so stubborn that they felt like, oh, well, it doesn't matter what we do. We're going to make money. We're going to be at the peak. We're going to be at the top. But they didn't think about all that it took to stay at the top for as long as they did. They they honestly confused being the best as being the company with the most. The company with the most IPs. Oh, we have the most IPs. We have more IPs than anyone else. So, we're the best. But that's not necessarily how things work. And Bob Iger started that. And I think someone like Michael Eisner deserves an apology from people or more appreciation, even though, yes, he made his own mistakes. He made a lot of errors in his judgment during his tenure. But one thing he didn't do is he didn't sacrifice the integrity of the brand for just purchasing every IP that he could possibly find. He did do that, but he also still created something with the Disney Renaissance and with the advancements with the theme parks to still make Disney as a brand as big as it ever was, if not bigger, because it was starting to fall off in the 80s. Kind of a similar situation as to where Disney is now. It was considered to be stale. It wasn't innovative. And Eisner came in and he innovated. He was an innovator. And that ties into another reason for their decline. They don't innovate anymore. And if they do, it's very rarely. So in the past, Disney, especially in the theme park division, they were innovators. I mean, that there's a reason why a lot of the people who worked on the theme parks were called Imagineers. They took pride in being imaginative and being ahead of the curve and doing those things. And they're not necessarily doing that anymore. So they're not as innovative as they once were in multiple fields when it comes to their brand, whether it's the theme park division or even films or television. Like, for instance, Pixar at one point in time was a massive innovation. It was a big feather under Disney's cap. Now, it's not really anything special. It's become something that's just as homogenized and just as generic as their main brand. And they're the only ones to blame for that. Because a lot of these Pixar films, they just have started to just copy the same formula. Disney has started to apply the same formula that they did with Marvel and applied it to Pixar films or applied it to their own uh, uh, movies that were under their Disney brand. And as a result, you're getting more and more homogenized, more and more generic, more and more forgettable products. And that's not innovative. And they also embraced the nostalgia way too much to the point where it became a crutch. They thought that, oh, well, we'll just keep mining the nostalgia vaults and people will still pay us money hand over fist. Oh, we're going to come out with another live action remake of a classic animated film that we did years ago. And they made money in the past, so it's going to continue to make money. We're going to continue to make billions. And that's not happening because people are tired of it. Now you're getting people tired of nostalgia. And now they can't even mine that as much as they used to be able to, because now it's no longer considered something special. It's just considered something that they're doing to get a cheap revenue boost and to take advantage of the fans. And when fans start to think that you're taking advantage of them, then you are in serious trouble as a brand, because now the fans don't trust you as a brand. And when that happens, they don't want to support you as much as they once did, because they feel like they're being manipulated. And I really think that that's what Disney was doing when it comes to a strategy with these remakes, these lazy, half-assed live action remakes of popular animated IPs. They were manipulating the fan base to get cheap revenue, easy revenue, based upon preying on people's nostalgia. And now people are getting wise to it. And Disney is realizing way too late that they have damaged their brand. And I think this is just something that I don't think they can really undo completely, especially not in the near future. It's not like something that they can really fix immediately. They damaged their brand significantly. They really have, because of their stubbornness, because of their unwillingness to innovate. Let's just make the same generic stuff, but with a new coat of paint. Let's literally remake everything that we've ever made that has ever been somewhat profitable for the company. And in that process, you also make the original IP that isn't a remake less special. And that ties into another reason for Disney's decline, is that because of all of these different factors, Disney as a brand is no longer as special as it once was. It's no longer as unique. People don't always think of Disney now as the go-to brand for family entertainment. Disney is just another brand that exists. It's not the brand. And for a large majority of people, the only brand. Now it's just one brand out of many. And this is the end result of their own actions. What people in charge have done to this company. And yes, another reason for their decline is also how they have shoved and shoehorned in politics in their entertainment. So much so to the point where certain directors or certain writers or certain people are only hired because they meet a certain quota. And they started to focus on appeasing a minority of people on social media or in general who want Disney to be as diverse as possible, want Disney to speak upon and speak about certain issues uh, dealing with gender identity and all these other political elements. And as a result, the company has gotten this reputation of being woke and a company that is focusing more on being politically correct than it is entertaining its audience. The way that it reacted to certain things that happened in the political spectrum in Florida fairly recently, that definitely soured the brand for a lot of people locally. And that is also something that has really hurt Disney, because there's a lot of people who just refuse to look at the company the same way after that. And it's just become an absolute disaster. And they have embedded so many people inside the company that have these agendas, that have these ulterior motives, that in a way they've kind of set up a incel of sorts, or a cell of sorts. Not really an incel, it's a cell of sorts of people with these values and these opinions on the brand that aren't necessarily brand first, or profit first, or pleasing the widest audience first. It's about appeasing the small group of people that agree with them first and foremost, and their own ideals, and not necessarily the ideals of the entire company. And so that led to things just being completely confused and muddled when it comes to what people thought that Disney was trying to represent, what Disney was trying to say when it comes to itself as a whole. And these individuals started to take over when it comes to the messages that Disney was trying to convey. And for a lot of people, especially now, these messages, they are falling on deaf ears. They come across as forced, and because of that, uh, a lot more audiences, they don't want to support the brand, because they don't want to support a brand that is trying to force these messages down their throats. And I really don't know where Disney goes from here. I think they are making the right move in terms of scaling back. I think they definitely have made the right move in terms of releasing only one Marvel movie this year instead of four or five, or their usual slate. I think they are starting to make some strides when it comes to their theme park division a little bit, because they're trimming the fat more. They're closing down certain things. They're cutting things out that weren't necessarily as profitable. And they're not doing as many shows for Disney Plus, which is definitely something that I think is a plus for the company. But when you look at like the upcoming releases for their own brand, like it's all sequels again. It's all still popular established IPs. It makes sense from, I guess, an outsider perspective, or even insider perspective when it comes to business wise, because that's a surefire thing. But Disney really hit a peak in the 90s with the Disney Renaissance because they were doing something different, because they were innovating. Another Toy Story sequel, another Frozen sequel, that's not innovating. So I hope what happens is, okay, they do this to give themselves a nice boost financially with these sequels. And then I hope after that they then put more effort into being innovative again and creating their own unique new IPs and brands like Frozen that they can really lean on to get more eyes on the brand and also get more revenue. And I know a lot of people, they probably think this about Disney. Well, I don't care. I don't care what happens to Disney. I don't care if they fail. In fact, I want them to fail, and I get that. I understand that. Um, but I remember what Disney used to be. And that's why I don't want this company to fail completely and to completely collapse. Because to me, that's that's a betrayal, and that's just something that goes totally against what Walt Disney brought to this company, what he did to build this company, what others did after Walt accomplished to build the brand to what it once was. And I just don't want the company to completely fail. I think it should definitely have a near complete total overhaul. I think that the company would really benefit from focusing on building its main brand first and foremost. And you know what? Selling these other IPs. They are quickly realizing that buying Fox was a mistake. I called that. I said this is a mistake. They already have too many things that they're trying to juggle right now. This is going to be a problem, and it already is. Industry insiders are already talking about how this was not a good idea for Disney. And people inside the company are talking about how it was not a good idea for the company to do that. So I think Disney should get ahead of the curve here, and or the chopping block, so to speak, and sell the most popular IPs under the Fox brand to the highest bidder. Make what you can now, because these IPs might not really necessarily be as desirable by the time you think that they will be or should still be. Like that's what happens in the industry. That's what happens in this kind of business. Something that you think is a slam dunk and is a surefire moneymaker isn't always necessarily going to be that way by the time you decide to sell it. So get ahead of things. Sell Die Hard, sell Alien, sell Predator, sell all these other profitable, popular IPs under the Fox brand to the highest bidder, or just sell the Fox brand to another competitor. I think they should look into selling Lucasfilm again. I think they should look into maybe making a deal with Marvel, maybe or something along those lines. Because what Disney, I think, needs to do to survive another 100 years is not really put so much into relying on outside IPs that were outside their own initial brand, because that is what's happening to the company right now. They're relying too much on these outside brands and these outside IPs. And as a result, they're choking their original brand and IP out. They're choking it out. It's dying because they're not putting new life into it. They're not giving it new air. They're not doing what they need to do to make their own main brand and their own main IPs into something that is profitable or reliable in their own market. So, if Disney wants to survive as a brand, they want to survive as a company, they need to downsize. That's really what Disney needs to do to prevent a downfall to me. They have to downsize. And it's better to do it now than to do it later, because I think they're going to regret that. I think they're going to regret it immensely if they wait a considerable amount of time to downsize. If they think that, oh, we'll just ride this out, you're not going to be able to ride this out, because the film industry as a whole is something that is nearing a complete and total just overhaul in terms of the type of films that are going to be made, the type of movies that are going to be profitable, the kinds of budgets that are going to be used and utilized. The blockbuster as we know it is starting to die off. It really is. Just look at the box office receipts. Look at the numbers for so many of these big budget films. There are more bombs as of late than there are massive successes. So if this just continues and this trend is something that is a trajectory that thrives going forward, you can't have that mindset anymore. So you have to change. You have to find a way to get ahead of the curve. And I think Disney would set itself in a good spot if it did get ahead of the curve at this point. If it saw the writing on the wall, which it's there, and realized, man, we got to get out while we can so we have a chance to get ahead. Because if we don't do that, we're just going to be in the same boat as everyone else when things eventually do start to shift dramatically. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on the downfall of Disney. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.